So we put a lot of money in. There was a big investment to those markets, and we didn't sell anything. A lot of marketing money, translation money, but we were not localized enough, and we learned a lot about that. So, and that's also your game, of course. Localization, when you go cross-border with your own web shop. Nowadays, we also have marketplaces, etc. But with your own web shop, is essential. You know, you have to localize 100%. If not, you are not going to compete with the local heroes in that other country.
So, hello, good morning. How are you, Jeroen?
Hi, Oscar. I'm good. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me here today. Very nice.
Just like a quick question. How do you pronounce your name, like a native?
Yeah, it's Jeroen. It's a typical Dutch name. I think when I was born, my parents didn't have the vision that I would go international. So, but it's like in France they would say Jérôme or something like that. So here in Spain, everybody calls me Jeroen or Geron, or it's. But I heard a lot of names, but I answer them all, so no problem.
Okay, so Jerónimo.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I heard from a lot of people that that's not a good name in Spain.
Yeah, it sounds a bit old-fashioned, and I think you're not. Anyway,
Well,
so thank you very much for joining after this very interesting intro. We're going to be having a very interesting chat today about everything cross borders, because you are the cross border man. Basically, could you please tell the audience a little bit of introduction about yourself, and obviously, if you could introduce your two hats. One is Cross-Border Magazine, and the other one is Salesupply.
yeah. Well, my name is Jeroen Leenders. I'm from Holland. I'm Dutch, and well, I'm a little bit of a dinosaur, I think, in e-commerce already. We started 18 years ago with retailing online. We started that in Holland. We had our own web shop back then, and we sold car parts to end consumers. So normally when your car is broken, you go to the garage and they fix it for you. But we had the idea to start selling car parts online, and back then it was completely new because nobody did that. It was a very traditional market, and we were very disruptive, especially in Holland. So we came with this idea to sell car parts directly to end consumers, and it was very successful. So the first year we sold already a lot of parts, and then we had the idea, well, this works in Holland. Why shouldn't this work in Germany or in France? So we went to those two countries. So we went cross-border 18 years ago, and that was also pretty new because I think only Amazon went cross-border back then, and they were in Germany and in the UK. I think they also were in France back then already, but that was pretty new. And well, we went to Germany and France, a big market. So we think this is a success in Holland. So this can only be a success also in those two countries. And we failed miserably. So we made every mistake that you could make. We made them. So we put a lot of money in. There was a big investment to those markets, and we didn't sell anything. A lot of marketing money, translation money, but we were not localized enough, and we learned a lot about that. So and that's also your game, of course. Localization, when you go cross-border with your own web shop. Nowadays, we also have marketplaces, etc. But with your own web shop is essential. You know, you have to localize 100%. If not, you are not going to compete with the local heroes in that other country. So we learned a lot. We made a lot of mistakes, but then we saw that our solution back then was we need to be present in the country. We need to open a little office there. We need to work with how do you say that? With native people there, people who live there, who speak the language. So we did that. We opened an office in Germany. We opened an office in France. We put local people there, and they did everything that we did with the shop in Holland. So they did the content, they did the marketing, they implemented the right payment methods in those countries. They did the customer support, so everything was localized. And then we start investing again in marketing to get traffic to those web shops. And then we saw that the orders were coming in, and people were phoning us, mailing us, had questions. So back then, and I think still it is, buying online is a matter of trust. And if people don't trust you, or see a Dutch phone number in France that they have to call a Dutch number, and then what do they get? A Dutch customer support? Do they speak my language? So it's all about trust. Online selling is all about trust. And when we implemented this, we got successful, and we rolled out more countries. We did 8 countries after that, and it was funny because we won the cross-border award in Holland in the sector.
Wow.
Yeah, it was very funny. It gave us an extra boost, and it was a big party. And we were sitting at that party in a round table with other retailers in Holland. And they said, guys, how did you do this? I want to sell, we want to sell cross-border as well. We want to sell in Germany as well, and in France and all the other countries. How did you do that? And I told them this story with native people, offices there. And they said, can we use your staff in those offices, and that we do the same trick as you did, and we pay you, we pay the staff, we cut the cost in half or in whatever. And I said, okay, well, maybe that's a good idea. And we start doing that. And that was 15 years ago when we started doing that. And then Salesupply was born. So we start servicing other retailers who wanted to sell cross-border in all those countries. And now, 15 years later, Salesupply is a company with 300 people, with 15 offices all over the world, with more than 800 projects running. And we work for a lot of companies in a lot of verticals like fashion, home and living, electronics, supplements. So it became successful, very successful.
So you work as a sort of like a country manager sort of thing.
Yeah, that's how we started years ago. Yeah, we transformed a little bit to a different company, but yeah, 15 years ago we did that. You know, we had marketing people in every country, we had translators in every country, we had people who did the customer support for our clients there. So we're an enabler of e-commerce, of cross-border e-commerce. So yeah, and that took off pretty good.
Wow, amazing. Yeah, amazing story. And especially about the car parts, because as you said, you know, I mean, it is sort of disruptive nowadays. And nowadays it makes sense, no? Because of like, you know, whatever recession or like just like people just like trying to not buy so many cars anymore. So it makes sense nowadays, but like 18 years ago, oh my God, that was like really like, you know, like a good vision, no, into the future. And what about the cross-border magazine? Because we know each other because of cross-border magazine.
Yeah.
So when did you start it, and why did you start it? Because in the middle of all this, like building this very successful company, like in proper international company, where does in cross-border magazine idea come from?
Pop. Yeah. Well, I think it's now 8 years ago that I thought, you know, we have with Salesupply a lot of experience, cross-border experience. And why don't we share this with the world so that other people can also, let's say, read and learn, you know, let's talk about business case. And, you know, what I saw back then in cross-border e-commerce is that every company is in Holland, we say everybody is inventing the wheel again, you know, so it's a very closed, people don't share a lot of their knowledge with other retailers. That's what I noticed back then. Now it's a little bit different.
I thought that was like very Spanish minded. I'm quite surprised that you are like this as well. You Dutch people, I mean.
Yeah, even in Holland, we people kept it for themselves, and then I thought, I can fill up that gap. I can become an authority or a specialist in cross border if I share my knowledge with other people. And so I came up with the magazine, and the magazine, it's a physical magazine, a paper magazine, but we also directly implemented a portal, crossbordermagazine.com, where we write daily about e-commerce news, about business cases, about success stories, cross-border success stories, but also the failures, the challenges, so that people who are interested in the topic selling in other countries or in other continents can read that content and can learn from it. And it's also becoming, and that's why I like you are also a partner of this project. It's becoming more a forum where we connect suppliers with retailers. So the retailer has a challenge, has a problem. In your case, it could be bad translations, no sufficient traffic, no conversion, and we can connect that problem, that challenge, with the supplier or a partner in the cross-border magazine project. I think that's the main goal of the project. I want to connect people with each other, because if I can do that, if I can be let's say the big connector in this world, then everybody's happy and everybody will have business. And I would love that retailers improve in cross-border selling. That's the whole idea behind it.
That's a good mission, huh?
Yeah,
Like,
so that they
like,
don't
like.
have to make the mistakes that I made. I made a lot of mistakes, and if other people can learn from that, then they don't have to make that mistakes. And because it cost me a lot of money, learning money, and I want to share that. That's the,
That's amazing. And now I would like to ask you, what about the difficulties in managing a proper international company? Because this is also one of the questions that has popped up in other episodes. Like when you go cross borders or when you become international, you might be opening offices in other countries, but at the end of the day, even if you don't, you have to sort of like make people from other countries join your company, your team, and that is when interesting situations happen, especially in managing, these like multilingual, multicultural teams. What's your take on this? How have you at Salesupply and Cross Border Magazine cope with this?
Yeah, this is a good question. Yeah, what we have are actually decentralized offices. So in Spain, here we have a Spanish office with a Spanish team, Spanish manager. We also have that in France, in Poland. So it's although we are a big company with a lot of people, we can micromanage it in the countries, and that's good. What you were talking about, I saw that also happening a lot. That retailers from Spain, for example, they built their own international company inside of Spain in their own office. So they hire, I don't know, Danish people, Polish people, whatever. And then you have that mix of culture, which sometimes goes well and sometimes does not go well. The problem is, what I saw with a lot of retailers who did that, who built their own office with their own foreign people. Here in Barcelona, maybe you don't have that problem, but in another city, you run out of people. You run out of foreign people. So if you need, I don't know, in Holland, Spanish customer support, and you want that to have that in-house, yeah, maybe you can find 1, 2, or 3 Spanish people. But in the end, if somebody leaves, you have to fill that gap again, and then it's becoming difficult. So that's dangerous for your business. So we decentralized it. So every country has its own office. And what we saw is that a lot of retailers like that because they can outsource that service to us. And we always have the backup. We always have, for me in Spain, it's not hard to find Spanish people or in Holland. But in Holland to find Spanish people, yeah, maybe in Amsterdam that goes well, but in another city you are blocked in very soon. You know, it's not easy. But yeah, cultural differences, and you know that, Oscar, as well. It's always cultural buying behavior is another thing. Yeah? You know, people in Spain, they have an other cultural buying behavior than people in the Netherlands, for example, or people in Italy or in the US. You know, so yeah, cultural difference is that's what cross-border e-commerce is about, solving those problems.
And yeah, and at the end of the day, as you said, you know, there's this concept of trust that you mentioned earlier, which I think is center to cross-border. How do you manage this trust, both as sales supplies, but also a cross-border magazine, in relation to the your own customers? I mean, how do you provide trust to them? Obviously, because you've been on the business, on the cross-border business forever.
Yeah.
That's a good sign of trust. But also, do you have like do events, or do you go to most events as well, or what's your presence? Is just digital presence, or also face to face? Because and this has also popped up in some other episodes. The importance of like still going to face-to-face events, and to, you know, like because at the end of the day we are human, no? And
Yeah.
we need to create this connection and this trust, this build, maybe at the beginning online, but you know, what do you reckon?
Yeah, yeah, you're right. You know, I think events are very important in our business. You know, as a supplier, sales supply, I go to a lot of events because, like you said, we're all humans, and I like that human interaction. You know, those online videos is nice, but you never get the same feeling than when you meet somebody. You know, so that's for me very important. I go to a lot of events. I see you also always on
Yeah,
events, on the e-show and
everywhere we go,
shop.
everywhere.
Yeah, but I think that's key. That's key, and that's what I didn't like in the period of COVID, that we couldn't do that anymore. For me, that was a big disappointment because I was not used to do video or online videos or talk with people online. I had to adapt really to that, and yeah. But I think being present is key. Networking is key. That's also why I built the Cross Border magazine. Is to, I don't know in your case, but Sales Supply, we not depend on partners, but we like partners a lot in the business because partners, they you can drink a beer with a partner, that's very nice, but you can also share leads, or maybe a partner of Sales Supply has a problem that I can solve, and the other way around, you know. And if you know each other, you get top of mind and I know a lot of partners because of the Cross Border magazine project. And that's for me key to generate leads for Sales Supply and for the other partners. You know, it's essential. And yeah, the events, I go to them, and that's also a good thing about Cross Border magazine. People invite me a lot to speak. Yeah, to speak at
Yeah.
events because they know I have some cross border experience. So I'm invited as keynote and etc. And that's also what I really like, and the interaction with the people. That's yeah, it's for me very.
Yeah, yeah, I do agree completely. You know, partnerships. You know, the power of partnerships, and events. What's about, especially when you are invited in these to these events? What's your, I mean, what have you seen most about the typical mistakes that people do, or what do you talk about when you are invited to these events? I'm sure that because of your experience, like your almost 20 years experience in the business, I'm
Yeah.
sure that you one of your topics is like common pitfalls. But
Yeah.
what do you see nowadays? Because obviously e- the e-commerce scene is not the same like back then that nowadays. both in good terms and in bad terms, because now there's much more competition, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
What are your typical topics, or what do you see most in these events?
Well, yeah, what I can tell you is in the 20 years of cross-border experience, I see a lot of things going well, retailers who did really well. And I also saw a lot of mistakes. And I can tell you the biggest mistake that I see, and that has to do with customer experience. The biggest mistake that I see with retailers, brands who want to sell internationally, is that they respect a lot their domestic customer. Yeah. So, for example, a company in Spain, they respect the Spanish customer. The Spanish customer is delivered in 1 or 2 days. The Spanish customer and consumer can call a Spanish customer support. They have a return right for free, for example, to send things back. So the Spanish customer is well respected. Then they go to another country. They go to, for example, Holland. It's easy because I'm Dutch. They're going to sell in Holland. Then it goes wrong because they don't respect the Dutch consumer as they respect the Spanish consumer. So the Dutch consumer has to wait 5-6 days before the package arrives. When something's wrong, he has to call a Spanish customer support. He has to wait, but because they have to translate his message or whatever. Returns, if he has a return, the end consumer or she, then he or she needs to pay for the return because the return has to come from Holland, it has to be sent to Spain, and so they have to pay 5-6 euros. And then if you want to compete with the local competition in Holland, where they do respect the customers, as well as you do in Spain, then you lose that competition. Then you're gone. So it's so essential that you give the customer in Holland the same customer experience as you give it them to your Spanish customers. Then you have to treat them the same, because otherwise the Dutch customer say, oh, I bought that once, but I'm never going to do that again. Something went wrong. I had to pay for my return. I couldn't reach customer support. They only had email. I got a bad translated email. Then they don't come back, and then you lose. So all the marketing money that you put as a Spanish company in that Dutch market, it goes away. You get bad reviews. And there it goes wrong. And I tell this for almost 15 years to everybody who wants to go international. Please respect every customer as your domestic customer, and then you will see results, and otherwise you will not. And
that's a big thing, to take into account. And customer first, yes, but not just domestic, also the international. No, I mean,
and nowadays, with the marketplaces nowadays, back 15 years ago, there were no marketplaces. Yeah, Amazon, that was the only one, and eBay. But nowadays, with that many marketplaces, going cross-border, it has becoming easier. That's a channel you can use. I always say it's a quick and dirty way to see if your product has a chance in a different market. If you go to Amazon and you register and you want to sell in 5 countries in Europe, you can do that. And then you can see, hey, in Italy, people buy, maybe in Holland not, or in the UK not. So then that's the first market research that you can do for your brand. If that works, well, maybe you can then also transform your web shop to that country.
Yeah, I do agree. Marketplaces like nowadays are very good for testing the waters, not to see if actually your product could be selling in that market. Although it's not that easy though, because first you have to select the right marketplace.
Yep.
Maybe you can go for a more general sort of Amazon one, or maybe you can go to bol.com, because like previously, like actually I think it was like a month ago, we were asked to sort of like convert an Amazon listing from Germany into a Dutch listing intobold.com,
Yeah,
which has nothing to do actually. I mean, there's like another way to do SEO, whatever, no?
yeah,
But then it is right because marketplaces they have customers, but you also need to treat them well.
of
You
course.
have you have the logistics and the and the customer base there, which is a
Yeah,
lot, but you also need to sort of like tell them and speak to them in their language, blah 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 blah. I'm not going
yeah,
to start because I won't be finishing. I'm very interested because one of my things, like in the past, I always wanted to have a magazine.
oh yeah,
One of the, well, I mean, maybe not to have a magazine, but especially people who like me, we studied languages and
yeah,
linguistics and everything. So writing is something that we like, or that you know we thought, well, maybe I thought when I was younger that I could be writing something in the future. What was the challenges of like setting up the cross-border magazine? Because one thing is to have like a company on, obviously, something that
yeah,
I mean, you've been doing forever, and
yeah,
another thing is to set up a really like successful magazine. So
yeah.
what's what happened here?
Yeah. Well, you just have to do it, I think. But you're right. You're right. I didn't know anything about publishing before. But I was lucky because in Salesupply, we had a marketing person, a girl, Janine. And Janine worked for the Dutch e-commerce magazine Twinkle before she started working with us. And I was always with the idea of a magazine like you. It was in my head. And then she came to work for us. And after a couple of months, I said to her, Janine, shall we set up a magazine, but not like Twinkle just in Holland, but an international magazine. And I was lucky that she was enthusiastic about the idea. So we did this together. Because without her, I couldn't have done this because I had no
Mhm.
idea. I had no idea. Now, 8 years later, I'm more. I'm not a rookie. I'm not a rookie anymore. But yeah, it's true. Publishing is completely different than what I did. That
Mhm.
services with sales supply. But it was nice, and I when I started the magazine, I thought, yeah, I can do this with Sales Supply, but then it becomes a Sales Supply magazine. It becomes a very
Mhm.
commercial piece of junk. I don't want that. So I went to. I thought I need partners for this. I need
Mhm.
partners who are specialists in their field. Like you
Mhm.
in
Mhm.
translations and in localization, cultural stuff, but also in payments and logistics. In what do we have more? Legislation,
Mhm.
taxes. So I thought in every let's say sector, every vertical of e-commerce, I want to find somebody who is experienced in that.
Mhm.
And I went directly for the big shot. I went to PayPal, or how do you
Oh
say PayPal?
wow.
Because I saw that they had a cross-border team in Paris,
Mhm.
and it was a big team. And I saw that they had a Dutch person who was the director of that global team. And I thought, well, yeah, I connect with her on LinkedIn, and it was funny because she lived in Barcelona as well. So
Barcelona.
I connected with her. I said, listen, I want to talk to you, but she didn't know me. She said, well, what about? And I said, well, let's have coffee, and I will tell you about this idea. And I told the idea about Cross Border Magazine, and she said, I love this. She said exactly the same like you said. I was thinking about doing this with PayPal as well,
Mhm.
but we never do it. We don't have the time, and we are focused on other things. And I said, well, be my first partner, please, and then we will find other partners as well, but not only payments, but also, like I said, logistics, etc. And then we started with 4 or 5 partners doing this
Mhm.
project 8 years ago, and now we have, I think, 16 or 17 partners. More partners I cannot have because then the magazine will be
Yeah.
but yeah, I was lucky also there that she liked the idea. Maybe if she said back then, no, 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 we're not going to join this project, maybe it will never took off, you know. And I
Hmm.
don't know, but sometimes you need to have a little bit of luck as well. So
Yeah, sure, sure. Do you have any success stories that that you either publish or not, both with Sales Supply, but also with Cross-Border Magazine, that you could tell us about one of these really nice partnerships that has, led to a success story in either Sales Supply or Cross-Border Magazine?
yeah, well, I think what we talked about a little bit earlier, the success is connecting,
Hmm.
networking, connecting people to each other.
Hmm.
I liked your story in the last issue that we had about Paley,
Uh-huh.
the
The
suitcases,
suitcase.
business
Hmm.
case. I really like that story because you had a solution for them. You know,
Hmm.
you did your service very good, so they could sell more in other countries because of your
Hmm.
translation work. Yeah, those kind of stories, and I see that the readers of the magazine like those stories. The
Hmm.
readers or retailers like to read about other retailers, you know.
Hmm.
And that's the good thing about it, and that's also the feedback that I get. And those are fixed themes in the magazine, so there's always one or two or three business cases in the magazine,
Hmm.
so that retailers can see, hey, they had problems and challenges and they solved it like this. There's always research and insights in the magazine about cross-border, the development of cross-border e-commerce worldwide. It's still
Hmm.
growing. It's still growing fast. One out of third purchases in Europe are cross-border
Yeah.
purchase transactions, and that will keep growing. You know, with the Chinese marketplaces, it will be crazy. So cross-border is growing, and I tell people about that, and people read about that, so that they can um, enter in other markets. That's the success story. If I see that a retailer opens other markets and sells there, that's for me actually the drive and the energy that I get from that. And I also see that with the sales by clients. Of course, you know, we helped a lot of or supported a lot of brands internationally who really do a good job now, and who see that the turnover was in the past maybe 90% domestic, 10% international, and it's now
Hmm.
shifting to 20% domestic and 80% international. So they're not depending only on the domestic market anymore. So there's
Hmm.
a spread risk as well going international, and they grow, you know. And I think, yeah, for me that's the kick still after 18 years in this market that yeah, that gives me energy. That's
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. Do you agree? Because this is something I noticed, or we noticed at my company, or that precisely because of the pandemics, that made people go cross borders much more, because they
Yeah.
realized that their domestic market were or disappeared, or were just like shrinking a lot, and then they just decided to, okay, if I want to survive, I need to,
Yeah, that's
you
it.
know,
That's it,
just go
Oscar. You
go
know,
cross border.
you have to. You have no choice actually. If you stay, you can be very successful here in Spain. You can be very successful. But in 5 to 10 years, if you're not going abroad, other people will enter in your market. And there will be somebody who's selling cheaper, better, faster, has better reviews or whatever, and you will be gone. You know,
Hmm.
it's you have to go international. And that's what I tell everybody in my speeches always: go international, or you will not survive in the end. You know,
Hmm.
if you think about the future. And I think you have to realize that because that's an important thing.
Hmm. And talking about now, we just like mentioned pandemics past, that's way back. What about the future of cross borders? What do you reckon is going to happen, or how are things going to be changing? I don't want to mention the buzzword, but I have to. The AI magnificent. What's going to happen?
Yeah.
What will
Yeah.
happen with cross borders?
Well, like I said, cross-border transactions will grow. I think they
Hmm.
will double. It's now 1.6 trillion transactions worldwide, cross-border, a
Hmm.
year. That will grow double to 3.3 trillion in 2028.
Hmm.
So cross-border will keep growing. I see a trend, maybe it's not a trend, but that I see. You said it before that people stock their products in the countries where they sell.
Hmm.
You mentioned the
Yeah,
bol.com example.
yeah.
So a Spanish company wants to sell on bol.com, but puts his stock in the bol.com warehouse or
Hmm.
in a Dutch warehouse,
Hmm.
third party warehouse, because you need to deliver fast.
Hmm.
The Dutch customer who buys on bol.com doesn't want to wait 5 days, and Bol
Yeah,
doesn't want that because they kick you out.
yeah.
So that's a trend. So that they move stock to the countries, and then what I see is the customer experience. What we talked about. That's also a trend. So respect the customer in the other country. So localize, native
Hmm.
customer support. Your shop completely Dutch or German or whatever. Think about the law, legislation. We are in the EU, but every country still has its own strange things.
Hmm.
Taxes. What about taxes? You have to pay VAT in those countries. So cross border is growing, keeps growing. There are a lot of retailers who will keep searching for suppliers who can fulfill their challenges or their problems that they have
Hmm.
solutions for that. And AI, yeah, I think AI will help us with that customer experience.
Hmm.
I think in the past, retailers had a lot of data, but they didn't know what to do with it or
Hmm.
how to use it. And I think AI is a perfect tool to do something with the data that you have, to
Hmm.
analyze it, to do better marketing, to personalize better to
Hmm.
your end consumers, to do better stock management. Translations. You also have to work with AI or have to deal with it in one way or the
Hmm.
other.
Hmm.
So AI will stay and it will change the world. Uh, but in the I think in the next 2 3 years, AI will be a perfect tool to analyze your data and to adapt on that and to give the consumer a better experience. I think that should be the goal of the retailers. And and also the social selling, of course. That's also selling on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook. That also
Yeah,
has a channel. How do you say that? A channel and a challenge as well.
yeah.
So social media, logistics, which is very important, of course,
Hmm.
AI, and keep that customer experience as high as possible, so people come back to buy at your store.
Hmm. And I mean, now we've been sort of like focusing a lot on Europe, but what happens with the US market uh,
Yeah.
and US brands who want to land in Europe because we get loads of clients from the US that they think it happens more or less like when we think about Latam, that we think about them as a block. The Americans think that Europeans we speak European, and we have just one culture. Do
Yeah.
you do? What's your? I mean, do you work with American and into and from American brands with sales supply?
Yeah. Yeah. We work both ways.
Hmm.
Uh, and what you say is true. Selling in Europe, that's one thing, but selling to another continent, Latin America or the US, is more difficult because you have
Hmm.
time differences. You have to put your stock there because otherwise you will be always too late by sending the packages or the orders. We work both ways. So we help American companies or South American companies to the EU, and the other way
Hmm.
around. EU companies to the American countries, and that's a big market. I hear you have a lot of questions about that as well, we also do have that. We have a lot of demand for helping American companies to Europe and the other way around.
And what are the specific challenges when you do cross-continent e-commerce, or apart from the typical that you just mentioned, like, logistics is, like a big thing,
Yeah.
what do you think it is like the challenges to do cross-continent?
Yeah, there are other things playing a big part. If you want to sell, for example, on a marketplace in the US, just a simple thing, then you have to be registered in the US. You need a bank account in the US. You need somebody who's there more or less a director or is responsible for your business there. You need somebody who does your taxes there. When you sell within EU, that's more. It's more easy
Easier,
to do that.
sort of, yeah.
Yeah, and then you also have the time differences. So if you want to have a meeting with somebody, it's not complicated. It's not rocket science, but there are other things that playing a part in intercontinental cross-border. You can overcome them. There's no problem. There are a lot of partners who can do that, who can help you with your bank account, with your fiscal procedures there. With your taxes, no problem. But please think about that. And America, of course, it's a big continent. It's a big. So distances are very. It can be a problem. So maybe you have to stock your product in 2 or 3 warehouses in the United States to cover the demands of the marketplaces, because they want to send the product in 2 days. You have to comply with that. So it again, it's not rocket science, but it is a little bit more difficult. It's a little bit more difficult. You have to think about more things.
It is adding more layers of complexity to the
Yes.
already complex thing of selling
Yeah.
digital whatever. And do you also have presence, like
Yeah.
a cross-border magazine presence in the US? I mean, do you
Yeah.
have readers from
Yeah.
the US?
Yeah, most of them are digital readers, so they download the magazine, and we have a lot of visitors from the US. So if I look, what kind of people are visiting the website, a lot of people are from US, UK, and then we have India is coming up as well a lot, but they are interested in everything, I think. And then Spain, France, Italy, Holland, of course. But most of our visitors on the online portal are from the States. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, I'm sure that they are just like trying to learn everything about
Yes,
us.
because of that. Because of that. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Good. So I think, Jeroen, we are finishing the interview. I don't know if you want to add something, or do you want to comment on something that we just missed? I think we have covered like very interesting topics already.
Yeah. No, I don't
Yeah.
have anything to add. I
No.
think it's a very
Okay.
nice conversation.
And so let me just like finish this chat with you with the 2 typical questions I always ask everyone coming. One thing is, could you tell us a very funny or not so funny anecdote related to culture clash or language differences? I'm sure that you living in Barcelona, being Dutch, and here in Barcelona we speak already 2 languages, or you have traveled, like, I'm sure, everywhere.
Yeah.
You must have very funny and not so funny stories that you could tell us.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe this is funny, maybe not. But 15 years ago, have the company Just Eat. Everybody knows Just Eat,
Yeah.
and it's a Dutch company from origin. They started
Ah.
also, I think, 18 years ago with this concept. And in Holland, it's called thuis bezorgd. It means like home delivery. Very simple.
Okay.
And then they expanded to Belgium. And they also called it, because the Flemish people speak the same language
Yeah.
as we
Yeah.
do, but it is different,
Is it
So,
there are differences,
and
definitely.
they intend, or they see things different. So he rolled out with the same URL that he had in Holland, thuisbezorgd.be, it's the same, actually the same. But thuisbezorgd in Belgium means an escort service, so that
Oh,
you
wow.
that you want to hire a girl.
Uh-huh.
So that was a big mistake, and they found that out after 1 or 2 months that they didn't. There was
They didn't
nobody
get.
who came to the platform who ordered any food because it was a big misunderstanding. And I think you see that a lot in your translation work as well.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Like
yeah.
it's and those
That's
are
the that's
funny.
culture, That's
Culture,
culture.
that's
Yeah.
culture. Yeah, yeah. And you see, Belgium is very close to Holland, and even there, same language, they made that mistake. And it's a running gag in Holland, this mistake, because everybody likes to talk about this because it's a typical mistake that a lot of companies make when they have bad translations. So they have to contact you, Oscar.
Yeah.
Anybody who's watching this and who needs good translations, they have to go to.
Thank you very much. And and I'm going to introduce this example to my pool of but localized namings that I already have. And
Yes.
the very last one, who would you invite, or who would you tell me to invite to this podcast to talk about anything related to cross borders? It could be anyone. It could be an e-commerce shop, or it could be a solution. It could be anyone who can, uh, like give us some insights on everything cross borders, which is like a very big.
Yeah, well, I've been thinking a lot of people can I can come up
Of
with a lot of
course,
people,
yeah.
but I think that we or you should search for a nice retailer, and maybe
Mm-hmm.
a Spanish successful cross-border retailer
Mm-hmm.
who can explain his journey and the steps he made. Because
Mm-hmm.
I think here in Spain, besides going with the marketplaces internationally, the Spanish companies have a lot of difficulties to take a real cross-border step with their own web shop, with their own
Mm-hmm.
store.
Mm-hmm.
They are afraid. I see that in a lot of meetings that I have, and I'm searching for a company that has made that step, who was afraid as well before, but who conquered it, and could be a very good example for Spanish companies. Because, like I said, if you don't go in 5 or 10 years, your business will be destroyed because other companies will enter in Spain and they will take over.
Mm-hmm.
So I really want to help the Spanish companies to make that step, but maybe we should find somebody who can really talk about that in a good sense, in a good way.
Okay. Do you know anyone specifically? You're having in mind anyone specifically that you know that they've done things right?
Yeah,
Because to
I
have
know.
like someone specifically to talk about this
Yeah,
who are doing things down to letter,
yeah.
it's not that easy. I mean, in the Spanish market. So yeah. Well, okay, but maybe we don't say anyone.
Let's think about it. Let's think about it.
Let's think about it. Let's think about it. And it's been a super pleasure having you here. I hope
Thank
that
you.
you have enjoyed.
Yes,
And yeah, I'll be seeing you in some events. And
yes,
I will leave your contact details down in the description boxes from Salesupply and Cross Border Magazine, and also your kind of recent podcast. I know that you're doing
yeah.
at
You're invited. You're invited as well.
that
So,
I am invited as well.
yes.
So yeah, so they can contact you. Thank you
Okay.
very much, Jeroen. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise. Thank you very much, Oscar.